If you are watching this episode this week, I apologize because my main clip of me sitting at the desk talking into the microphone got corrupted somehow. I tried to fix it, didn't work, looked up tutorials online and everything, and I could not figure out how to fix the issue, so I'm super frustrated because I really wanted to have a visual version of this episode. But now I learned my lesson. Instead of trusting iMovie to save my files until I'm ready to export it right before I upload it, now I'm going to export the episodes as soon as I finish editing them, even if it's a couple days before. So yes, I have learned my lesson, and I am very sorry you don't really get much visual for this week, although you will see a couple clips of me filming some of the inside of the book and like the maps at the beginning and stuff, but most of this is just gone. So I'm very sorry, but hopefully this does not happen again. But I hope you enjoy the episode, and thank you so much for your patience. And yeah, thanks for listening.
I used to be a Weird Warriors kid. Now, I'm a Weird Warriors adult. Each week, I'm discussing a chapter of the iconic books by Aaron Hunter. My name is Charlie, this is my cat Lucky, and in today's episode, I will be talking about the prologue of Book 1 of the series The Prophecies Begin, titled Into the Wild. Join me on this adventure into the world of warrior cats. So before I actually start talking about the prologue itself, I want to clarify that, well, if you didn't hear my introduction episode, first I'll explain like the difference between the paid and free versions of this podcast. Basically, in the free version, you'll get access to the regular episodes, and there will be video versions on YouTube and on Substack. And if you pay $5 a month on Substack, you'll be able to be in the comments section. You'll be able to see bonus content like unboxings and other fun videos. And also, you'll be able to get the spoiler versions of episodes. But what I wanted to clarify is that sometimes there might not be spoiler versions of episodes. And by spoiler version, what I mean is like there will be 2 cuts of the same episode. One of them will include when I talk about things that are spoilers, and one cut where I keep those parts out. And the reason there might not be spoiler versions sometimes is because some of the chapters I might not talk about any spoilers at all, and I might just talk about the chapter itself. But other times I might be reminded of a lot of things that I forgot about that happen in the series, or things I do remember that I'll be reminded of, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 and just start talking about all these spoilers. But I don't want to ruin that for people, so that's why I keep that behind a paywall. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify, sometimes there might not be an extra version, but you'll still be able to access the other bonus content for $5 a month. So anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's get into this book. So let's just admire the cover art of Into the Wild. I love it. I know they've done new versions of the cover art, but I love the originals. I mean, it's mostly the nostalgia, but I do think it's very, very pretty. One thing I never noticed from this cover art is that there's actually little cat silhouettes behind Rusty on the cover, and I did not realize that. I thought it was just shadows, but when you look closer, you really see little cat ears. It's so cute. And then I noticed on the back, we have the same art, but it's expanded a little bit. And you see the collar on the ground, and you see 2 cats in the foreground, which are the same cats that we see on the front and back of this cover, which is interesting. And I don't remember which characters those are supposed to be, but I don't know. And then also another thing I noticed is that these books, the whole first series, they're smaller and thinner than I remember them being. But I mean, this one's still 272 pages, so. But yeah, okay. And then Into the Wild, this was published on January 21st, 2003. And it was written by Kate Carey. And I did see that it says special thanks to Kate Carey. And here, there is also some like teaser text at the very beginning. I think it's an excerpt from Fire and Ice, the second book, because it says right before that, keep watch for book 2. But I'm not going to talk about that excerpt. I didn't even read it because I don't know. But then going through, and interestingly, it does say, it does list more of the books in this series, but only up to book 4. So, I don't know, I guess when this version was printed, they hadn't even finished the first series yet, but it is interesting that they had enough written already that they could include those titles there. Then we get a page with the dedication, and it says, "For Billy, who left our 2-leg home to become a warrior. We still miss him very much. And for Benjamin, his brother, who is with him now in StarClan." I think that's very sweet and also very sad. And then there are some pages, and it's called the Allegiances section, and it talks about the different positions and the different characters in each clan, and even the ones outside of the clans. Now, I'm not really going to go into depth on that, but I do think it's an interesting and helpful section to reference back, because when you're first diving into this series, like, all the different character names can be a little hard to keep track of, so it's a helpful guide. And then we get this iconic map of the clans, and I love the art for this, and I like the art that's like around the border of the map too. I think it's very pretty. And we have the emblems for each of the clans. We've got Thunder Clan, River Clan, Shadow Clan, Wind Clan, and Star Clan. And then we have a map that is like the human version of the map, which I feel like I never really looked at. It's interesting to see because they never really end up referencing any of these locations. So I think it's interesting that they even decided to include this in the first place, to show kind of the contrast between how the humans see the area versus the cats. And it's interesting how the cat version is so much more illustrative and the human version is much more like graphics and map. Like, there's even a key on the side. It says deciduous woodlands, conifers, marsh, cliffs and rocks, hiking trails, and north. So it's much more, I feel like humans claimed the land and have blah blah blah. I don't know how to articulate what I'm saying, but I hope it's coming across. It's not very articulate, but I just think that's fascinating. And then we get into the prologue, and let me make sure I didn't miss any of my notes of things that I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I wonder where the list of vocabulary is. I feel like there's like a glossary in some of the later books. I thought it was in all of them, but I remember there being like a list of all the terms to remember, because there's also a lot of vocabulary that is very specific to warrior cats and how the clans talk about things. That is helpful to have that glossary. You want to get down, Lucky? Are you staying on my lap? Okay. So here is the prologue. And Lucky, please do not step on my computer. I need to see my notes. Excuse me. Thank you. Okay, so right off the bat at the prologue, we get this cover art, or this chapter art, I mean, and it's interesting because that is the cover art for the second book, Fire and Ice. Lucky. Okay. So, anyway. So right off the bat, the very first sentence. Oh my gosh, Lucky. Ow. Ow. Why are you chewing on my wrist? No thank you, baby. Oh my gosh. I apologize if Lucky is distracting in this episode, but I also want to film this right now and record this. I don't want to wait until he's sleeping because, I don't know, it's hard to predict when he's gonna be more energetic. But I don't know. I feel like it's in the spirit of warriors to have a cat causing shenanigans. So, yeah. So the first sentence of the prologue is, "A half moon glowed on smooth granite boulders, turning them silver." So right here, we're getting a reference of time. Now, I feel like the moon cycle is slightly confusing to me, but from what I understand, saying that it's a half moon means it's either 1 week before or after the full moon. And then it says, "The silence was broken only by the ripple of water from the swift black river and the whisper of trees in the forest beyond." So we know we're near a river, and if we look at the map, we see that the river is near RiverClan. And then we have these cats coming from all around, going over the rocks. And also, if we look at the map, right next to the river is a spot called Sunning Rocks. So we can assume that's where we are. And then we have the first character named Oakhart. And he is a bracken-colored tom, which I guess in Warriors, the tom cats are the male cats and the she cats are the female cats. And then we get a clarification that this is the Sunning Rocks because we have a tabby cat declaring, "How dare you hunt in our territory? The Sunning Rocks belong to ThunderClan." So then we've got the first clan to be mentioned, ThunderClan. And then we've got Oakhart says, "After tonight, Tiger Claw, this will be just another RiverClan hunting ground." So now we've got that clarification that, yes, we are near RiverClan. We're at the Sunning Rocks. This is a battle between ThunderClan and RiverClan over this territory. And then we have a cat warn that more RiverClan warriors are coming. And Tiger Claw sees them coming out of the water, which I think it's really cool how they describe the RiverClan cats. And I think this is also a really interesting way to kind of like get readers' attention, because what we know about cats is that they're afraid of water. So to instantly be hearing about these cats that are like swimming out of the water, it is very engaging in my opinion. So it says, "Tiger Claw turned to see sleek wet bodies sliding out of the water below the rocks. The drenched RiverClan warriors bounded silently up the shore and hurled themselves into battle without even stopping to shake the water from their fur." And then we get some kind of mocking from Tiger Claw to Oakhart. Well, not mocking, he's just saying, like, you may be good swimmers, but you can't take over the forest. This is our territory. And then, we've got Mousefur getting pinned down by a cat, which I don't think we hear which cat that is that was pinning her down. But Tiger Claw lets go of Oakhart, who he was battling, and he knocks over the enemy warrior and tells Mousefur to run away. And then it says, "Behind her, Tiger Claw spat with rage as the RiverClan Tom sliced open his nose." Oh my gosh. So a couple things here. I'm a little confused because we'll see this a bit later, because I also read chapter 1, and right after this I'm gonna record my discussion about chapter 1. But I feel like they say like the Tiger Claw spat. I'm trying to picture a cat spitting. Like, do cats spit? Or I don't know. But anyway, then I just think this paragraph is so violent, and it's just a small taste of all the violence we're going to get in this series. Blood blinded him for an instant, but he lunged forward regardless and sank his teeth into the hind leg of his enemy. Like, oh my god. And then we've got Red Tail saying that this is useless, we need to retreat. And Tiger Claw is arguing back, no, this is our territory, we have to keep fighting. And Red Tail, we get the first mention of Blue Star. He says, Blue Star would never expect her warriors to fight against these impossible odds. We will have another chance to avenge this defeat. And then he tells everyone to retreat, and they all retreat. Oakheart yowls jubilantly, and all the River Clan warriors are kind of celebrating, and the Thunder Clan warriors retreat, and Tiger Claw hangs back for a minute to look at the blood-stained battlefield, and then he goes into the forest. Then that is that scene. So that's already a lot. Like, it's starting out this series with a very violent scene, and we've got Tiger Claw defending ThunderClan and saving Mousefur. Now, I think this is interesting because there's, like, I've been studying screenwriting, and I actually just graduated as a screenwriting major, or a film major, but I also got a screenwriting certificate. But there's this concept in screenwriting called save the cat, which I think is actually funny to think about in terms of warriors because it's about cats. But save the cat is the concept that you want your protagonist to do something at the very beginning of a story, like saving a cat, to make the audience root for them. Even if they could be not the best character, you want your protagonist to be rooted for. Now, even though Tiger Claw is not our protagonist, they do literally have him save a cat at the beginning. Or, in this case, more specifically, like, just, or more vaguely, I mean, he does a good deed at the beginning, which, in this case, is literally saving a cat. So, yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And then we cut to a new scene. In a deserted clearing, an old gray she-cat sat alone, staring up at the clear night sky. And then we find out soon after that, after a small tortoiseshell she-cat emerges from a dark corner, we find out that this is Blue Star and Spotted Leaf. And oh my gosh, it's so exciting. So Blue Star asks, how is Mousefur? And Spotted Leaf says she'll heal quickly and that the others will recover too. And Blue Star expresses that she's worried about the clan because she says ThunderClan has not been beaten in its own territory since I became leader. So this is also a lot of exposition that I think is done well because it's not explaining directly to the reader like Blue Star is the leader of ThunderClan and blah blah blah. Like, we're getting this of one character talking to another, and it's very natural, I think. And we also find out, without it being plainly explained to us, that Spotted Leaf is the healer. She says, you are a gifted medicine cat. So we're getting this very quickly and succinctly, and I think it is natural, and it doesn't feel like too forced. And then we get the introduction of StarClan. Spotted Leaf asks Blue Star, are you asking StarClan for answers? And Blue Star says, it is at times like this we need the words of ancient warriors to help us. Has StarClan spoken to you? And Spotted Leaf says, not for some moons, Blue Star. And then we get this iconic moment where it says, suddenly a shooting star blazed over the treetops. Spotted Leaf's tail twitched and the fur along her spine bristled. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, but basically Spotted Leaf says it's a message from StarClan, which is that fire alone can save our clan. And this is very iconic because it is the first prophecy of the Warrior series, and there are a lot of prophecies that happen throughout the books. And this first series of the 6 books is appropriately named The Prophecies Begin. And then Blue Star is confused because she says fire is feared by all the clans. How can it save us? And Spotted Leaf says, I don't know. But, and then Blue Star says, you have never been wrong before. If StarClan has spoken, then it must be so. Fire will save our clan. So this is just so exciting as the beginning of the story. It's very cinematic. I can imagine this visually. It's so, it feels like 2 visual scenes, and it really kicks off the series well, in my opinion. Let's see if I had any other notes about this. Oh yeah, I thought it was interesting that Blue Star is described as old because I feel like I remember when reading the series, I never really thought of her as old, and more so I thought of her as aging over the course of the series. Like, I didn't think of her as an old cat when we're first introduced to her. So I thought that was interesting. And then what else did I... Oh yeah, in their discussion about the state of the clan, they say, the season of New Leaf is late and there have been fewer kits. ThunderClan needs more warriors if it is to survive. Baby, stop walking on the keyboard, please. Oh, you're so cute. Can you hear him purring? I don't know if you can hear that. What, Lucky? So this is kind of some of that introduction to their vocabulary. Like, New Leaf, I believe, is their word for spring, and kits is their word for newborn kittens. And then Spotted Leaf says, but the year is only just beginning. There will be more kits when Greenleaf comes. Now, this was a little confusing to me because I was thinking, okay, the year is only beginning. What do these cats consider to be the beginning of a year? Is it January 1st? Or is it spring when things start to bloom? That seems like a logical way to think of the beginning, but I am not sure. Yeah, so I guess we're approaching summer. We're in spring and we're approaching summer is kind of the timing that it seems to be. And let's see, what else did I have to say? I think that's pretty much it. So this has been a short and sweet episode because it's just about the prologue, and the prologue is only like 5 pages. So it's a quick one, but right after this, I'm going to film my episode and record the episode about chapter 1. So thank you so much for listening. Hi, Lucky. And thank you for being patient with Lucky, as I have had to do as well. I love you very much, Lucky, but you're distracting me. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. And if you'd like to access the comments and the other features and bonus content of the paid version of this podcast, you can go to Substack and subscribe for just $5 a month. And otherwise, subscribe on YouTube or whatever streaming platform you use where you can find the podcast. I'm still figuring out how to get it onto other platforms. I know it's on Spotify right now. I still have to figure out the other ones. But yeah, so I don't really know how to end these quite yet. But thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. This has been Into the World of Warrior Cats.